and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Russia poses an existential threat to Europe's security, warns EU's foreign policy chief. At least 9 people believed to have died in the cold weather gripping the US. National Day of Mourning in Turkey following a ski resort fire that killed 79 people. Thank you for tuning in. Russia poses an existential threat to Europe's security, EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas said at a conference in Brussels, calling for the bloc to boost defense spending. In the meantime, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pitched an idea in Davos of deploying European peacekeepers in Ukraine as a security guarantee for the country.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has warned that Russia remains a significant threat to European security, urging greater defense investment. Speaking at the European Defense Agency's conference, she stressed that underfunding of defense leaves Europe vulnerable. She pointed out that US President Donald Trump was correct in urging NATO members to allocate a greater share of their GDP to defense.
The only language that Putin speaks is the language of strength. The EU has strength. Together, EU member states' economies are 17 times bigger than that of Russia's economy. We must force his hand to show him that he will lose, and stop him before he attacks one of our own.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking at Davos, emphasized the need for substantial international support to safeguard against future Russian aggression. On Tuesday, Zelensky proposed the deployment of at least 200,000 European peacekeepers as part of a security guarantee for Ukraine following any ceasefire deal.
200,000, it's a minimum. It's a minimum. Otherwise, it's nothing. Otherwise, it's something, like somebody, like we had OSCE, and nobody knew where they can help you. They had offices, and that's all.
Zelensky noted that such a force would be essential given Russia's military strength of 1.5 million personnel compared to Ukraine's significantly smaller numbers. In Davos, Zelensky also called on Europe to establish itself as a strong global player, saying it needed to be able to guarantee peace and security for itself and for others. Prime Minister of Poland Donald Tusk supported these ideas in his speech at the European Parliament. Tusk, whose country currently holds the 6-month rotating EU presidency, said a time of comfort was over as the new US president was saying Europe needed to bear a greater share of responsibility for its own security.
I want to tell you that only an ally can wish another ally to get stronger. Do you treat this as something an opponent of Europe would say? In terms of alliances, cooperation for the security of the Western world, the European Union, the United States, Canada and the NATO, we must still try to not only speak a common language, but also take action. And today, it is Europe that must take such an action.
Poland leads NATO in defense spending, allocating an estimated 4.1% of its GDP in 2024, while 8 of the alliance's 32 members spend less than 2%.
US President Donald Trump said that he would likely impose fresh sanctions on Russia if its President Vladimir Putin refuses to negotiate about ending the war in Ukraine. Trump, however, gave no specifics.
If you had a competent president, which you didn't, the war wouldn't have happened. The war in Ukraine would have never happened if I were president. But that couldn't happen because the election was rigged. Well, we'll look into that. We're talking to Zelensky. We're going to be talking with President Putin very soon. And we'll see how it all happens. We're going to look at it very soon. One thing I do feel, the European Union should be paying a lot more than they're paying because under Biden, I mean, we're in there for $200 billion more. Now, it affects them more than it affects us. We have an ocean in between, right? little thing called an ocean. The European Union should equalize. We're in there for $200 billion more than the European Union. I mean, what are we, stupid? I guess the answer is yes, because they must think so. But the European Union takes advantage of us tremendously on trade.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio outlined his vision for foreign policy, emphasizing national interests as his top priority. Speaking to State Department employees, Rubio pledged to make the department the centerpiece of the new administration. He made it clear that while the U.S. will always strive to prevent conflict, it will never do so at the expense of national security, core values of the country and its people, or national interests.
Extraordinary honor and a privilege.
Thousands of migrants from South and Central American countries are stranded at the Mexico-U.S. border after a series of Trump's executive orders on immigration, including suspending an app that allowed migrants to seek asylum at the border.
As Donald Trump was sworn into office on January 20th, thousands of migrants in Mexico were left stranded as their CBP-1 appointments were cancelled. The application was used by migrants to secure legal entry into the U.S. The move, part of a broader crackdown on immigration, has left many fearful for their safety, with reports of violence and extortion against migrants growing. In Ciudad Juarez, a Honduran migrant was attacked just hours after Trump's speech.
Even here, right here in Juarez, criminals called migrants in a place. I don't remember where, and they extorted them. They took $1,400 from each one in the family. So as we have limited resources, it's an amount. They ask for a lot. So some have been injured, others did not make it, others have disappeared, and others have had the opportunity and the privilege to be able to hand the money.
Meanwhile, in Tijuana, shelter directors and local authorities are under pressure to manage the growing migrant population, though many believe the responsibility for safety lies with the U.S. government, not just local shelters. As the USA reinstates the Remain in Mexico program, migrants are now weighing difficult choices, with many considering returning to their home countries or seeking alternative routes to the U.S.
My plan A is to wait for a new app or asylum application to come out so I can enter legally. I don't want to enter the US illegally because it is not right. There are legal processes we must follow thoroughly to enter legally. Meanwhile, I'll keep on working in Mexico to sustain myself.
My family is back in Honduras. I've got no one here. I suffer because my family is far away. I go sometimes without eating. I was here because I wanted to cross to the United States, but since the CBP-1 application was cancelled, I have nothing to do here. Now I'm going to work for a couple of weeks to return to Honduras.
Meanwhile, Texan authorities have expanded a buoy barrier along the Rio Grande. The installation of these buoys, which now extend over a kilometer, aims to block crossings, further complicating the situation for those seeking asylum.
More than 700 migrants have reached Spain's Canary Islands and the country's coast in the past day. According to the country's Interior Ministry, some 3,000 irregular migrants reached the Spanish archipelago in 2025.
Over 400 migrants reached Spain's Canary Islands, according to the Spanish Red Cross and local authorities. Spanish Coast Guards towed a wooden boat carrying 67 men, 2 women and a toddler to the port of Arguineguin in Gran Canaria late at night. Local police counted the migrants as they disembarked. In addition, 5 other boats carrying at least 350 migrants reached the coast of El Hierro. The Canary Islands, located about 125 kilometers off the coast of northwestern Africa, have seen a significant increase in migration, primarily from Mali, Senegal and Morocco. at least 46,000 people arrived through the increasingly dangerous Atlantic migration route in 2024, according to Spain's Interior Ministry. This is part of a larger trend in which Spain received almost 64,000 migrants last year, a rise from 56,000 in 2023. While such crossings into the European Union fell by 40% from January to November 2024, crossings on the Atlantic route increased by 19%, according to the EU border agency Frontex. The Canary Islands have become a key destination for migrants seeking to reach Europe, with the region struggling to manage the surge in arrivals.
A 28-year-old man from Afghanistan has been arrested following a knife attack in a park in the German city of Aschaffenburg, in which 2 people were killed, including a toddler, police said. The suspect was detained at the scene in Schöntal Park, an English-style garden in the Bavarian city where the attack occurred. A 41-year-old man and a 2-year-old boy were fatally injured, police said in a post on social media platform X. 2 seriously injured people were receiving hospital treatment. A national day of mourning was declared in Turkey to honor the 79 victims of a fire at a hotel and a ski resort in the north of the country. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan attended the funeral for the victims.
Flags have been lowered to half-mast at government buildings and Turkish embassies worldwide in honor of the victims of the ski resort hotel fire. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan attended a funeral for the victims that died during the fire and has vowed that those responsible for the tragedy will be held accountable, promising a thorough investigation into the cause of the fire.
Allahu Akbar.
9 people, including the hotel owner, have been detained in connection with the blaze. 6 prosecutors have been assigned to oversee the investigation. The fire, which claimed the lives of 79 and left dozens injured, broke out at around 3:30 a.m. in the Grand Kartal Hotel, a 12-story wooden building in the Koroglu Mountains. The hotel was full of 238 guests during the busy holiday season, and initial investigations suggest that the fire quickly spread from the 4th floor to the upper levels. In the chaos that followed, terrified guests desperately tied bedsheets into makeshift ropes to escape the flames.
We heard cries for help from here. One woman even jumped out of the window. We were really scared in that situation. They tried to climb down using bed sheets.
Firefighters, emergency responders, and medical teams from the surrounding areas rushed to the scene. But freezing conditions and the hotel's difficult cliffside location delayed their arrival by over an hour. Despite these challenges, they worked tirelessly for 12 hours to bring the fire under control, finally extinguishing the flames.
Our firefighters rescued nearly 30 citizens. Of course, there were flames, and they were trying to carry out their duties under very challenging conditions. There are still firefighting teams on standby at the scene.
In the fire, 51 were injured, at least 1 in critical condition. 17 people have been treated and released with minor injuries. At least 2 victims were killed after attempting to jump to safety. As the bodies of the identified victims are returned to their families, efforts continue to identify those still missing. The hotel was inspected for fire safety as recently as 2024, with no reported issues. Yet, some guests claim negligence, suggesting that the hotel's fire detection system failed to alert them to the danger.
At least 10 Palestinians have been killed and nearly 40 injured by Israeli forces during a major operation in the Jenin area in the occupied West Bank, the Palestinian Health Ministry says. Palestinian media reported that on Tuesday there were several airstrikes as a large number of troops entered the city and its refugee camp, backed by drones, helicopters, and armored bulldozers. Israel's prime minister said it launched an extensive and significant operation to, quote, defeat terrorism in Jenin, long seen as a stronghold of Palestinian armed groups. Qatar has urged both Israel and Hamas to respect all the terms of the ceasefire deal, with Doha expressing optimism on the implementation of the agreement it mediated.
Qatar, one of the mediators of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire, expressed optimism about the three-phase agreement's implementation. Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani urged both Israel and Hamas to fully comply with the terms of the ceasefire. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Majed Al Ansari echoed this optimism, emphasizing cautious monitoring of the process.
So we are confident by the fact that the deal is being implemented on the ground positively. This fills us with confidence, yes. But of course it's a very careful confidence, where we are monitoring the situation, making sure that we deal with any report of breach immediately, making sure that we validate anything that we get from both sides, making sure that we have very clear lists and very clear technical information going from one side to another.
Addressing Qatar's stance on normalizing relations with Israel, Al-Ansari underscored that such steps must be tied to resolving the Palestinian issue.
Our position has been always very clear. Normalization with Israel has to be on the side of and a permanent solution to the Palestinian issue. And that will be through a two-state solution, and we have always been supportive of this.
Al-Ansari also mentioned ongoing preparations for the second phase of negotiations alongside partner nations.
The ceasefire in Gaza is now in its fourth day. After the first exchange of prisoners and hostages, next one is scheduled for Saturday.
After 15 months of relentless fighting, Israel and Hamas are continuing to negotiate the ceasefire deal reached on Sunday. Celebrations erupted in both Israel and Palestine as the agreement, mediated by Egypt and Qatar, offered a much-needed pause to the devastating violence that has claimed thousands of lives and displaced countless families. Meanwhile, one critical aspect of the deal focuses on releasing detainees. Israeli officials have agreed to free a significant number of Palestinian prisoners, including women and children, in exchange for the return of hostages held by Hamas. Families on both sides have expressed optimism, though concerns remain about the implementation and stability of the agreement.
While I was imprisoned, I lived with a great fear about how I would reunite with Ilya. She was only 9 months old when I was arrested, and she didn't fully recognize me. After 3 months, I lost all recognition of my baby, which was a painful feeling. I tried to convince myself that a child, when separated from their parents, would eventually grow attached to someone else. Naturally, she may have forgotten me, and I would need to slowly reintroduce myself.
She was a huge help to me. She kept me busy. She was moral support, even though she didn't want to be. Yeah, and I'm just so happy that I managed to do this journey with her.
The Rafah crossing remains a lifeline for Gaza, and the arrival of these supplies offers a glimmer of hope amid the devastation. However, the situation is still fragile, and the global community is urging all parties to uphold the ceasefire and prioritize long-term peace.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned the participants of the World Economic Forum of the threats posed by the climate crisis and ungoverned AI. Our Guy Schoen brings more from Davos.
Well, hello from the heart of Davos 2025 here on the bustling promenade. Business leaders, technology experts and policy professionals all mixing and discussing the day's events so far. One of the most talked about sessions today has been the address of UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. He's been speaking at the convention centre just behind us, and the central message of his speech today came in the form of a multifaceted warning. He asserted that the world is now facing significant geopolitical divisions, rising inequalities, and what he described as an assault on human rights. Well, the Secretary-General also continued the strong message he brought to COP29 in Baku, warning of the threats posed by the climate crisis and urging continued momentum on collective action. He also took a more moderate stance on regulation than some views we've heard throughout the business community in recent days, cautioning leaders against ungoverned artificial intelligence. His central message, though, remained the response to the climate crisis, encouraging industry leaders and financial institutions not to backtrack on climate commitments. He said we must not be on the wrong side of history and equally not on the wrong side of science. So, a strong message for a critical time in history, not just for these decision makers here in Davos, but crucially for the rest of the world. Guy Schoen for A News in Davos.
Rescuers in Indonesia continue to search for survivors after a landslide in the country's central Java province killed at least 19 people. Torrential rain in Pekalongan caused a landslide on Tuesday on a main road connecting the city with a tourist area, the Dieng Plateau. Search and rescue agency Basarnas said that 13 people were injured and that heavy machinery was deployed to clear road access for search teams. The agency warned residents that rain was expected in the next few days, which could cause more landslides and flash floods. The U.S. Deep South is facing a powerful winter storm, causing heavy snow, freezing rain, and widespread disruptions. At least 9 deaths have been reported, along with flight cancellations, highway closures, and power outages.
A rare winter storm is wreaking havoc across the U.S. Deep South, bringing snow, freezing rain, and Arctic temperatures to Texas, Louisiana, and surrounding states. At least 9 deaths have been reported due to the cold, including 4 from cold exposure, 2 in Texas and 2 in Georgia and Milwaukee. The storm has caused widespread disruptions, including highway closures, flight cancellations, and power outages. More than 2,000 flights were cancelled on Tuesday, with 3,000 more delayed, according to FlightAware Flight Tracker. Airports in Houston and Tallahassee have been shut down, and Port Houston closed its facilities as the storm continues. The National Weather Service has issued warnings for sharp temperature drops, especially overnight, which could worsen power outages and further disrupt travel. States such as Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida are experiencing up to 25 centimeters of snow, with record snowfall reported in Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida. Northern parts of New York State are also affected, receiving up to 45 centimeters of snow. The storm is expected to continue impacting the region, causing significant travel and infrastructure challenges.
In the United Arab Emirates, an Abu Dhabi company is using insects to convert food waste into biofuel and alternative protein, providing a step towards a greener future.
In Abu Dhabi, a desert warehouse is buzzing with innovation. Circa Biotech uses flies to tackle food waste and create sustainable fuel. The process starts with the delivery of food waste, which is fed to the insects. In just 10 days, the flies grow to the adult size, consuming the waste entirely.
It's called the black soldier fly. It's a beneficial insect that eats enormous quantity of waste. So in 10 days, they grow 500 times their initial weight. They eat all the food waste that we give them. After, we harvest them and we extract protein and oil.
The black soldier flies do not bite or sting in their adult stage, and their eggs ensure a continuous production cycle. The extracted oil from the flies is processed into biofuel, which can be used in aviation, while the protein supports sustainable farming when used to make animal feed. This method addresses global food waste challenges while providing energy alternatives. Circa Biotech's approach highlights a promising step towards achieving a greener future.
Over in the UK, the annual Winter Lights Festival returned to the streets of London. The festival, set to run until February 1st, showcases installations of artists from all around the world.
A trail of 12 dazzling new artworks by artists from across the globe was unveiled in London's Canary Wharf Financial District on Tuesday for the annual Winter Lights Festival. The installations brought a glimmer of brightness and illumination to the grey and wintry cold of the British capital. The artworks included a towering stack of bathtubs pulsing with light and sound, the UK's first illuminated bird in flight, a larger-than-life portal, black holes and mirages.
London is such a metropolitan, wonderful city, and I think Canary Wharf is representative of that. We'll have so much of that tied into the tapestry of who we are and the artworks that we've commissioned. So yeah, it's incredibly important to us, and that's all of our events almost are free and accessible. So it's great that both the communities can either be part of it with the artworks that are created, also for the visitors, everyone to feel involved, a part of Canary Wharf and part of the exhibition.
Artists from around the world showcase their installations, drawing inspiration from their diverse backgrounds.
We wanted to create something that is beautiful and to be admired, but is essentially a mirage and can't be trusted. And that is an analogy for social media itself.
One of the biggest challenges for us was to tell stories of our elders, especially our mothers, our aunts, our grandmas, people who migrated from Bangladesh to here. And so the biggest challenge for us was to celebrate them.
This year's festival, which features 4 artworks never before seen in the UK, will run until February 1st.
That's all we have for you for now. Thank you for watching, and do stay tuned to A News.